Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming out tonight. My name is Shoshana Wechter. I work at the Ypsilanti District Library as a reference librarian, mostly at the downtown library, but you might occasionally catch me at the Whitaker Road Library on a Sunday. Um, we are really, really happy and excited to be partnering again with the League of Women Voters of Washtenaw County to put together this candidates forum. And we're really thankful to the Ypsilanti Senior Center for hosting. And without further ado, here is Catherine Moreau from the League of Women Voters of Washtenaw County.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Moreau, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Washtenaw County. I welcome you to our in-person forum featuring candidates for Ward 3 City Council and Mayor of Ypsilanti. The candidates will be on the ballot in the general election on Tuesday, November 8th. The League of Women Voters works to expand voter rights and educate voters. We are a nonpartisan organization and are providing this forum as an opportunity for candidates to express their views related to their candidacy. Statements expressed by the candidates are neither endorsed nor opposed by the League. Also, the League does not certify any candidate responses to questions as accurate. Voters are encouraged to fact-check information shared at this forum. We bring you tonight's forum because we believe deeply that respectful sharing of views on community issues is vital to the functioning of American democracy. Our guest moderator this evening is Taryn Willis, a proud member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, Inc., past president of the Rotary Club of Ypsilanti, and I know she's busy all the time doing things for her community. She hosted our forum in June, and we're just pleased as could be to welcome her back. So, Taryn?
Okay, I am excited to be back, and I do thank the Ypsilanti District Library and the League of Women Voters for having me. Before we get started, I do want to make one announcement about another forum that is going to be happening on October 13th. The local Divine Nine organizations are going to host the County Commissioners and Judicial Candidate Forum. And the Divine Nine that will be participating is Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Rho Delta Zeta Chapter, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Theta Eta Lambda Chapter, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Delta Psi Omega Chapter, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Ann Arbor Ypsilanti Inkster, and Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Sigma Rho Chapter, and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Ann Arbor Alumni Chapter, along with Sigma Gamma Rho. These chapters and organizations are coming together to do a forum for judicial candidates and the county commissioners for the November 8th election. It is on Thursday, October 13th at 6 p.m. in person at the LRC, which is next to the county building. If any candidate is interested in participating, they do need to register in advance, and the information is on Eventbrite. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and we will now introduce our two candidates running for City Council Ward 3. And that is Ashanti Allona Harris, Independent, Ward 3, and then Desirae Simmons, Democrat, Ward 3. Welcome, ladies. All right, just a few housekeeping rules as we move forward. The forum will have the following format. Each candidate will have an opening statement of up to 1 minute. Each candidate will have a closing statement of up to 90 seconds. The closing statement will follow the audience questions, which we will explain momentarily. In between, I will ask questions which came from the community. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to a question. Okay? Candidates are to focus on the issues, and no personal attacks are permitted. At appropriate times, a league representative will indicate the time remaining. That's Ann over there with the orange and pink signs. 30 seconds and then stop. If you have used up your time, thank you. If you have used up your time, you will be allowed to finish your sentence. If you go over your time, you will be asked to stop, in all fairness to all. The candidates will begin speaking in alphabetical order by last name. All candidates will have an opportunity to be the first or last to answer the questions. Following the questions from myself, which will last approximately 15 to 20 minutes, we will begin live questions from the audience. Audience members, you can line up here for your live questions once that part begins. In order to ensure fairness, a question must be addressed to all candidates. In addition, community members watching on our live stream can type in questions for the candidates, which will be read by myself, alternating between live audience questions and live stream questions as necessary. Candidates, you will have up to 2 minutes each to respond to audience questions. Our timer will indicate when you have 30 seconds remaining and when it is time to stop. All right, ladies, you ready? Okay, we will, good. We will begin with Ashanti Harris.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Ypsilanti District Library, and the Senior Center for this opportunity to introduce myself to the community. My name is Ashanti Allona Harris, and I made the decision to run as an independent because I wanted to be sure that I was a voice for all of my neighbors. I wanted to be sure that there were lessen the barriers that might prevent them from reaching out to me. I'm a newcomer to city politics, but my understanding of project management, reaching deadlines, understanding the need for greater communication, financial responsibility, strong belief in community input and utilizing it, I feel make me the right candidate for this at this time for Ward 3. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Desirae Simmons. I fell in love with Ypsi before I even moved here. I chose this place on purpose because of what I heard about the community. The accessibility, the affordability, the style, the vibe of individual and collective spirit, the energy. The community, so when I saw so many community members expressing fear of displacement from this place, I leaned in. I got involved. I asked how I could help. The reason I'm here today is because I've been able to grow and practice skills around dreaming, advocating, relationship building, organizing, and getting things done, even when not popular among people in power. I look forward to working alongside the people of Ypsilanti to hold on to what we love about this place and to show up, listen, and put in the work. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have 15 different topics that we could be discussing today, all the way from infrastructure, housing, city council culture, city budget, all of those, okay? So each candidate, again, as a reminder, I will read the question once, and then it will not be repeated unless requested, all right? And each candidate has 2 minutes to make their statements. All right, the first, let's just jump into it, right? Let's talk about city budget, all right? The first question is to Ashanti. MLive reports that the budget analysts presented to City Council earlier this year showed that the city will have completely depleted its reserve funds by 2027, despite allocating 100% of federal COVID funds to the city's general fund. What changes to city revenue and or expenses do you propose to balance future city budgets?
I believe that what we have to do is be sure that we're doing ongoing budget reviews on an ongoing basis instead of annually, so that we can have a good idea when we're making decisions how that impacts our budget at that time, because we have to be looking at the long term, 10, 20 years down the line, and what we do today might not immediately show, but there could be an impact that will affect our services that we're giving to the community that are very important to us. Things like our social services, our health care. There are things like the violence and intervention program that they'd like to start. And if we don't have the money for it, these critical essential services won't be available to us. So I think it's really, we have to look at more of an ongoing budget review instead of just once a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question to Desirae.
Thank you. So when thinking about the budget, I think it's important to name how we got to this shortfall and what has been contributing to that. In July 2021, the City Council added 3 additional police officers to the budget, which was already in addition to 3 police officers that were already not hired, which means that we're holding funds for multiple positions that are not currently held. So one thing that I would see in terms of thinking about the budget shortfall is, as opposed to kind of holding money aside for things that aren't being spent, why don't we put that money into use, doing things like raising the salaries of the staff we already have so that they stay, and then we don't have to refill those positions because we are losing great people, as well as investing in different solutions that might actually overall decrease our need for the expense of more police officers by addressing issues up front, such as housing, health, and quality of life, so that not only does it more draw people to the city to start to increase our ability to bring in more tax revenue, but then also it also makes it a better place for people who already live here.
Thank you. All right, this next question is still in the category of city budget. If elected, what 3 steps would you take to put Ypsilanti on a firmer financial footing? Ashanti. Oh, I'm sorry, Desirae, I'm sorry.
So one thing I would do is to look at the budget very deeply and clearly and identify things that might be in our budget that are just kind of holdovers, things that we spend but we don't actually realize the benefits of. There are some different things that have come up in council in the past, such as consulting fees for Lansing, as an example, that I don't know that the city actually benefits from. So I think there's things like that. I also think that there's ways that we look at the way that we provide services and think about how we can get reductions. So for instance, in my position on the Sustainability Commission, we had a great presentation by the now gone Ron Akers, who left for another position. But he talked a lot about, for instance, recycling carts. So we're getting new recycling carts, y'all. They're bigger, which means that there's a possibility that then we don't have to have recycling picked up every week, which could cause a cost savings. And there's also other ways that we can look at services. If we were able to reduce our trash, then look, we could do that with that expense as well. So we can look at some of our large expenses, how we do services, and think about ways that we can find reductions by being creative as well. Another thing that I would do is to really kind of go to the community and talk about this really upfront and critically about what services we have, what things are on the line, and get a sense of where people would want to see us really focus our resources, because I think that we can make some decisions together and also think about what kind of partnerships we need with the community.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ashanti.
So again, I think we need to review the budget on a more ongoing basis when we're making decisions to be sure of the impact that it's going to have. I think that that should be a bottom line. And then you'll hear me say a lot, community input. I think it's important to, as we set priorities, that we talk to the community and find out what's important to them, because there are things that we could change. And as we make partnerships with other companies for things like our social services, we should reach out and do more of that. That's going to provide a cost savings there. So really looking at our budget, understanding, and being sure the community understands the budget. I have found when I did door-to-door that there was a lot of discussion about the budget and issues with it, and there were a lot of differing opinions on it. And I think if everyone gets on the same page and really understands what we're doing here in the city, I just think it's positive and will make us stronger. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is for Ashanti. And we're going to move into the topic of infrastructure. The Cross Street Bridge is in need of repair or replacement. A study by OHM advisors estimate the cost of the needed repairs at $4.8 to $14.4 million, depending on the repair methods used. This bridge is the main point of entry into Depot Town. What solution do you recommend to fix the bridge, and does the city have the funds to pay for this?
So I just took a look at this when it was brought to City Council maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and I believe they put forth 3 or 4 plans for repairing the bridge. And I think we have to look long term and do something that will take us past the 10 years for improvement on the bridge. The problem, of course, is the payment, because we don't have the money to pay for it right now. And I think that the city staff has done a good job of looking at grants and road commissions and other types of ways to bring funds in. But I think we really have to look at that again, because I hate the thought of just cutting services to pay for it, but that is a crucial street for our city to get through Depot Town. So I really think we just have to look deeper into it. But I think these partnerships are going to be very important, and then to really streamline the budget and see where we are with it. But long term, out of the options, I think we have to look at something past 10 years on a bridge.
Thank you. Same question to Desirae.
Yeah, I think the city of Ypsilanti has quite a few bridges that are in disrepair, crumbling, and we see these reports that's like fair, good, which just means it can be put off a little bit longer or not so long, right? But we know that this bridge is a main bridge. I use that bridge, so I don't drive, and so I usually am on a bike on it, which is horrible, or walking with my child, which is horrible, because I'm like, oh, you could just crumble right into the street. So we have to take care of those kinds of things and think about, again, as Ashanti was saying, long term, and putting in a plan in place now to make sure that we're fixing our infrastructure with an eye on longevity, with an eye on long term, so that it's not crumbling again in, a short time. And so I do think we do, I know folks have been looking at grants and things like that. I would think about also partnerships. There have to be some kind of business partners or corporations, even at the state level, that think, oh, it's important for people to get into Depot Town. That's an important commerce part of the city of Ypsilanti. We hold a lot of street festivals there as well. And so I would, think about what that looks like as well, to see if we can get some partnerships to help to pay for that, and then also saving, obviously, for those kinds of expenses, because, again, this isn't the only bridge that we'll have to look at. There's many things across the city that we have to get in line with, and we have to make sure that we are lifting up the infrastructure in all of the wards of the city. And so we just kind of have to get a plan together. And I think part of it is also being strategic and having a strategy for how we use our funds and how we spend in these times.
Thank you. Continuing with the topic of infrastructure, Desirae, do you think our downtown is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that, and how would you pay for those changes?
I'm just trying to think about what healthy and successful mean to a space like that. I think, our downtown, we've been having so many great events. I've seen it really alive, which I think is what you want for a downtown space. I've seen a lot of new businesses coming into different storefronts downtown, which is always exciting to see, and some different restaurants coming through. I've seen some places that have been there for a long time also stay, and also we know some have left for many reasons, right? And so I think it's important for us to also have a plan in place for how we bring in new businesses into those spaces as old ones exit. And so that's, again, being proactive and having a good relationship with the business owners so that you have a sense of as things are changing, too. I also think that there's different ways, I really hope, I know this might come up on its own, but I'll just say now, if we develop Water Street and we have housing and other things there, then that will also add to the vitality of downtown, because I think where people live becomes more vibrant too, and there's already quite a few people down there, so I think that could also help add to its health and ability to thrive. And so, yeah, I think, providing resources to develop more businesses there. I think having it feel more bikeable and walkable would be great, because then people who live here and who don't use a car to just get around town, maybe they won't need to use a car to get around town. And that will make it more attractive to just hang out there. I think we need to have more spaces like that, like Bridge Community Cafe, where you can kind of just hang out and feel safe and open. And I think and have access to the resources like social services in our library.
Thank you. Ashanti, same question.
So I'm going to include as downtown businesses, downtown Michigan Avenue, Washington, and Depot Town with that. And I believe that the businesses that are there are very healthy and successful. I definitely would like to talk to the business owners more, because we have to really commit to residents and visitors visiting our businesses so that they stay and they continue to grow. I find that people support each other and they really have a strong love for the businesses, but we have to frequent them so that they stay. And so how we can do that is going to be very important. But I believe we have a really healthy, strong, I know in talking to some people still, their staffing, we have shortened hours at some businesses, but we have a great mix, and I know that we can still bring in more with Water Street, with other development along those corridors, and then expanding and really working together with the businesses and city council so that they're sure that they have the resources they need to be successful. So I think it's a real strong partnership that the council and the business owners have to make. But I believe they're healthy and strong, and when we get Water Street in that area going, we're going to be even stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashanti. This next question is also for you first, in the topic of housing. What's more important for Ypsilanti right now? 1, building new homes and commercial space, or 2, rehabbing our existing homes and storefronts?
Could you repeat that one more time, please?
Yes. What's more important for Ypsilanti right now? 1, building new homes and commercial space, or 2, rehabbing our existing homes and storefronts?
I would say rehabbing our existing homes and storefronts is going to be important. There are a lot of properties that we could do more with that are vacant either, or that have space in the back that they could do carriage homes and other additional spaces on the property. We've got space. I think we have to rehab what we have. Affordable housing is important to me, and I think we have to look bigger at Washington County overall, because that is a concern. But I'd like to see us look at all the vacant spaces that we have and see how we can improve those, and then how we can partner to make it easier for the owners of these properties and businesses succeed in doing that, because they're struggling to be able to do that. So that's my personal opinion here, and what I believe that others would like to see.
All right, thank you, Ashanti. Desirae, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess, this is kind of a hard question with the size of the city of Ypsilanti. So 1, I would say, yes, I think we need to build where we can. because we don't have enough to hold what we need, who we need here. The population has been going down steadily in the city of Ypsilanti since 1990. We used to have 25,000 people or more here. And now I wonder, where would those people live if we were trying to get back up to 25,000 people? Where could they live, and where could they live with a high quality of life? And how will we attract those people here? We won't attract them if we don't have really wonderful and programmed parks, because that's something people of all income levels, ages, living statuses enjoy, are good parks. So I think we need to think about how we are creating a good quality of life, a strong sense of connection and community here, and trying to think how we house people here who already live here, instead of thinking about where else they can live in other parts of the county. So we need to build where we can. We do have some areas of land where there are opportunities that we need to seek, because we need people to live here. And then in terms of rehabbing, I do think that is important. We have a lot of homes that can use support. We noticed some on our street even that are sometimes are more elderly, senior residents that really could use some support, right? Sometimes I see these roofs that are gonna fall in, and it's like, well, what happens if we actually can fix that roof before they have to get moved out? And then that house just gets gutted and sold to people who don't already live here. So I think we could do that.
Thank you. This next question is for, okay, yes, sorry about that. Desirae, this is going to be our last question, then we'll do audience questions, and we do have one from live. We're going to talk about city council culture. How do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process here in Ypsilanti?
Thank you. This is like my favorite, because I really am a huge organizer that believes in democratic practice, and that is the way that we should make decisions and bring more people into decision making before it happens. As part of my campaign, I hosted a number of platform community events with that were focused in different areas. So I did one that was focused on housing, one that was focused on community safety, and one that was focused on public spaces and public engagement. And so this is really important to me, because not only do I think, by experience that I've seen that working in teams with others, you get the best ideas, you get people who have different strengths into the space, but you also get to hear people say, oh, well, what about this example here? What about this example there? And something that I've learned from going to city council to this point is that we could do better looking at examples all over. And we can become an example to other municipalities as well for our creative spirit and the ways that we can connect more with residents to be active in solving our problems by focusing on where people's energy and advocacy needs are, and by connecting with multiple levels of government to actually make this work. And so I think it's important, and I also think it's important for us, even though this is for Ward 3 representation, I do think it's important that we think about how we are connected across the city, because our issues don't live within borders just because we put lines down that say there is a border. And so I think it's important that we're taking a long view, because in Ward 3, we actually have access to opportunity, which means that it's part of our responsibility to actually do work in spaces that don't have that same access to opportunity, and to share our opportunity across the city. And so that's what I would like to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashanti?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, I can. Sorry, one moment, please. How do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process here in Ypsilanti?
Definitely, I would look to bringing back more regular ongoing meetings within Ward 3. I think we need to go back to getting more of the community involved with what's happening and get their input. I think it's important to make informed decisions, that we need that. As a Ward 3 council member, I would be representing all of my neighbors, and in order to do that, I need to speak with them. I need to gather their feedback, and I need to understand, and I think that's gonna help them too, because as it goes back to council, they'll say, okay, wait a second, we understand this, and there's more transparency in the decisions that are made within city council, and they'll understand better why decisions were made in the way that it was. And when they don't, I believe that contributes to a feeling of toxicity and negativity that really, if we just communicated more and they understood, they still might not agree, but I think it's important to have that transparency. So a big item on mine would be regular ongoing meetings with the community.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to ask a question, you may come up to this microphone next to me and ask that question. Okay, and just one other housekeeping note, if we could keep the applause to a minimum, just so that we can keep it moving. Sorry, I know it's fun, but. Okay, so we do have one live stream question that's coming up right now, and the topic is the Park Street development plus neighborhood groups. How have you, and this question is going to Desirae, how have you connected with Ward 3 neighborhood groups to understand neighborhood feelings on issues such as the Gilbert Mansion neighborhood group and their advocacy with the pending Park Street development?
So I'm not part of a Gilbert Street neighborhood group, so I haven't engaged with that group in particular. I'm not currently on city council, so I think that it's probably fair to say that I don't have to be engaged with every group as of yet. What I would say is that I have, the 220 North Park has been kind of rolling over a couple of years. I definitely have had some conversations with some folks who live in that neighborhood, sometimes just on porches as I walk around, because I am around a lot, actually. So I've had some conversations with folks in the community just there or at other events. And I've heard some different things that people have brought up during council meetings as well. And I do reach out to people individually around lots of different issues that come up, as people probably can attest to. Sometimes they don't like that outreach, but I do that. And as a council member, my goal is to be open to folks so that they can contact me. I am very responsive, no matter all of the different commitments I have. And so I would extend that to the residents as well, that I will be responsive to questions, and I would be willing to share thoughts and solutions together, and also to think about ways that we can solve multiple issues at once. I always think it's important to think about what it is that is at the top of priority and how I make decisions, and I would do that moving forward as well, even if I don't always agree.
Thank you. Ashanti, same question.
So the decisions of Park Street development were made with city council and community activists, and I was not a part of that decision, but they did a lot of hard work into working on that for a few years now. So I think that my role would be, if I went on to city council, is being sure that I really kept in tune with concerns and questions and had them answered by community members, especially that Gilbert Mansion Association, because it lays right on the edge of that development. So that would really be my responsibility and the action that I would take moving forward, since and I think it's also important to think about how big Ward 3 is and having others that are on it communicate with me what those are. So that's what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have someone from the audience that would like to ask a question, and this question will go to Ashanti.
Hello. I was just wondering, oh goodness, what day? Okay. I was just wondering what efforts you would make to better the connections and camaraderie between the youth and the elderly. Thank you.
That is a great question. It's a really good question. I'm very passionate about the youth and children and volunteering with organizations working with them, especially ones that help build up their mental and emotional and social skills. So I think that's very important, and I would continue to find avenues to do that. So that's definitely a concern. And then there are a lot of seniors, so at the same time, we have this balance. We have such a just diverse range in Ward 3. And the seniors, it's very hard for them to get access and services because some of them don't leave their house, don't have the ability to get out. And so we have to really reach out to them and be available. Kind of breaks my heart. But, I think we just have to work on outreach for our seniors and being available to them, and as much programming as we can do for our youth to, especially around social, mental, and emotional, would be a goal of mine. Thank you for asking that.
Ooh, this is a good one. So I'll kind of bop around to a few things. So one, I think storytelling is powerful and it's necessary for cultural change, which is what we need. And so I think that opening up the doors for more young people and our seniors and our elders to share stories would be powerful, because not only are we repeating history, we're in a cycle now, and we can actually learn from lived history. So I think that we can do that as a powerful thing. I think mentorship is amazing, and we see that happening with lots of different groups already. We see groups like Supreme Felons that are doing mentoring with young people. I also think that, I'm a big proponent of building up neighborhood strength, hubs, associations, ways that people know their neighbors more, and where we can know when there's an emergency. Oh, we know that, elder Mrs. So-and-so lives here and Mr. So-and-so is here. And so when there's a snowstorm, we send our young out and we say, shovel their sidewalk. That is part of what I would want to see us doing in community, because we care for one another and we know where each other are. And I think that will go a long way, because our elders look out for our children. When my daughter's at the park, I want to know that grandma such and such will look out the window and say, Indigo, get down off of there. I want to know that. And I want them to know that they have the ability and responsibility to do that as well. So I think that there's lots of opportunities to build those up. And I also think in terms of economic mobility, we need apprenticeships. We need ways for folks to be able to learn trades so that we are becoming more economically mobile, and that people are aging out of certain things, like farming, it's aging. Our farmers are aging. They need young people to come up behind them. And we need that as a community as well. So investing in those opportunities.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is from the internet world. It is, how will you handle conflict between your vision for the city and being a voice for your community? For example, there is a house operating as a halfway house in our neighborhood. Many neighbors have voiced concerns about this residence not complying with the city law regarding 3 unrelated persons allowed in a household. Previous council representatives have felt that stopping this would not be good for housing, despite neighbors raising concerns. This question will start off with Desirae.
So one of the things I'll say first is I'm pretty sure that limit on unrelated adults has been lifted. or at least was proposed through the Planning Commission to happen. So that's one thing I'll say about that, is I don't think that's actually a city law any longer, thankfully, I would say. I do think that it is important to deal with conflict up front, and I don't think we have to be afraid of conflict. You get a couple people in a space, conflict can happen. But I do think we can be upfront and talk about what is the underlying concerns. What are the concerns about this halfway house being in the neighborhood? And is that a concern that the city needs to take care of? Or is that something that as a neighborhood there can be a conversation about? I don't think the city has to solve all of those kinds of conflicts that happen within neighbors. And I do think that there are times when, for instance, my own personal beliefs might be at odds with somebody that I represent. And I'm not about steamrolling people, but I am about naming, who are we fighting for? Who is the collective? And when we talk about common good, who does that include? And are we creating conditions for those who are the least among us, who have the least access to resources? Do they feel like they can approach me and they can get a voice too? Because often those are the folks who don't have access. Those are the folks who don't feel comfortable. And so I lean into that. I lean into that before I lean into people who do always have access and whose voices are outnumbered in spaces like city council oftentimes. So I talk to people individually. I talk to people on the street. I talk to people on the bus, at the bus stop. I talk to people at Fed Up Ministry. I just go and I talk to people. And so I think that that's where I would get my information all the time.
Thank you. Ashanti, same question.
So that's a very specific question that I don't have a lot of information on, but just hypothetically looking at it, I would hope that the community member would come and ask me about it, and I would then take it to city council so that I could get input from fellow city council members, the mayor and the city manager on next steps, because I'm sure there's either the planning or ordinance department who would take care of that. So I think that's really something that's not just Ashanti is going to make this decision. Ashanti is going to facilitate going back to council and trying to find out what steps need to be taken for it. And I think that conflict is good. We don't need everyone to agree with us, because we'll get stronger and make better decisions when we have differing opinions. So I think conflict's a good thing. I just think that we have to do it in such a way that we're respectful to each other, so that then we can continue to do that, and that'll make us stronger. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a question from the audience, if you want to state your name and question.
Hey, my name is Brian. Hey, I have a question. So it's actually really sad. But so myself and so many of our friends and neighbors, the city, are in the midst of an affordable housing crisis. A recent report found that 26% of YCS students are experiencing homelessness currently. So my question is, what have you done, or what will you do to bring affordable housing to Ypsilanti and to ensure that everyone in the city has a dignified place to live without struggling to pay the bills?
That question goes to Ashanti first. Thank you.
So I have heard some numbers for homelessness with our students in the city, and I think that's not just affordable housing. I'd really want to look at a bigger picture, and I think that comes together with partnering with others, such as the school boards, to take a look at what's happening there. I think it's hard to just say that if we bring in affordable housing, our students are going to then have housing and shelter, which is so important for young people. I just don't think it's as simple as saying, let's bring in more affordable housing and do it. And it's a good question, and it's a huge concern if those numbers are accurate, then we really have to start talking to social services and trying to find out where we can do better and get shelter for these children. And I just don't exactly know the steps, but I think that it's partnering together, and I think that that should be a more immediate action and steps we should take to find out. And if we can't do it on city council, we can start working with giving the resources and putting things together, and maybe individually. Doesn't have to be a city council, but work on that. No child should be without shelter. That's just heartbreaking. But I don't believe that affordable housing is going to solve that.
Thank you. Desirae?
Okay. So affordable housing, this is definitely an area, this is one of the areas I got my start of organizing here in the city of Ypsilanti. I was on a subcommittee for housing affordability and accessibility, which was meant to really look at what is the situation here in Ypsilanti, specifically on the data that we had at that time, and to put forward recommendations and potential solutions that we could do, both in the short, medium, and long term. And so that's a subcommittee. You can find all of our information on the Planning Commission site on the city website. I also recently served as the chair for the ad hoc committee that was doing the community benefits ordinance for 845 and 945 Clark Road, which is an affordable housing development for seniors, families, and singles. And that was able to add about 304 units of affordable housing at 40, 50, and 60% area median income. Which 40% median income is close to what the Ypsilanti area median income is, which is about $35,000. And so that was a big win for us, that we have that development going in. I also have been having conversations with folks both locally and around the county and in Ann Arbor even around community land trusts as another way to create long-term affordability here, which could be both for housing, for space for farming, as well as for businesses, as well as for community centers. We can do anything we want. And I think that that's important to think about for that. And then also in terms of thinking about Water Street, advocating for folks at the state and federal level to use funds to clean it up so that we can then develop what we need there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We do have one more audience question, and then we'll have one final question, and then our wrap up.
Good evening. My name is Lee Tucson, resident of the city of Ypsilanti. In an opening statement, I heard a powerful word. The powerful word was love. And we know love hides a multitude of faults. And Ypsilanti, like any other city, has a lot of faults. So the question is, what will you bring to the table to make other people fall in love with Ypsilanti before they move here as you did?
Okay, that goes to Desirae first.
Be the change, be the change. So I think what I bring to help other people love Ypsilanti the way that I do is energy. And that means energy to bring vibrancy, to do fun things that you can just do in the park, to convene people, to have serious conversations, and to move things forward so people know that this is a place that you can come and make your dreams come true. It doesn't have to be what you see as all you get, because we all deserve more. And I think that when people feel that they can make a difference in the place where they live, then they want to be in that place, and that they can find what they love here, because we have a little bit of everything for everyone. And so I think being able to shine a light on that, to celebrate, to uplift, whether I'm there or not, I can uplift other efforts that people are doing. and I enjoy doing so. I enjoy helping people to understand why I chose Ypsilanti and I didn't go to Ann Arbor. But like that was a choice because I wanted to be in a place where I could walk around in a place and people would say, oh, hey. And I said, oh, yeah, I met you that one place, right? And that we can then make a connection and go from there. And that has created power in so many ways. And so I think being able to bring vibrant events here, being able to help people to understand what's already happening here, being able to share information about what's happening here in ways that are attractive and real. We don't have to ignore our faults, because we have them. That's just what it is to be in a vibrant place. But it's how do we work through those together, and how do we support so that it doesn't just get spread into one place more than another.
Thank you. Ashanti?
That's a hard question because I also love Ypsilanti, but I think that we have to start with the people in our community and being sure they still love Ypsilanti. Because if we take care of and involve and embrace all the creative, hardworking people that are here, that's going to translate when people come and visit us and go to our shops, go to our stores, go to our parks. But we have to start with the community members that are already there and being sure that they are here and still love Ypsilanti as much as they did when they first came. And so that really means talking, and if there's reasons why they don't or they're disillusioned with what's going on, we have to look at solutions and try and bring that love back, because that's what's going to bring other people, because you're going to talk and you're going to show that love to others. And just, we're already so powerful, and people are doing such, we saw during the COVID, how people came together and helped each other. So I think I would really work on talking to the community and bringing it back and being sure that the people that are here love it.
Thank you. Okay, so we have this final questions in regards to schools. What is your involvement with Ypsilanti Community Schools, and what are any future ideas for partnership that you may have? This question goes to Ashanti.
So I'm not currently involved with the Ypsilanti Community Schools, though I'm passionate about education and public schools. My parents are retired public school teachers. My sister and brother-in-law are public school administrators, and my brother has helped teach in some of the Detroit public schools. So you see a theme here. So I would like to get involved and see what help they need. I was not able to go to the meeting that City Council had with the school board, but I would have to say that anytime we can start doing more partnerships like that and talking to each other to see what's happening, I think is just important, and that perhaps then we can address some of those things with youth programming and what is needed, and talk to the youth, of course, not just the school board. You have to talk to them and see where their passions lay. So I think that that's really it. But any way I can get involved with the schools, I volunteered in schools. I would try and look at doing that to solve. And I think that I found in my neighborhood in Ward 3, we have a lot of educators that are not in the Ypsilanti Community District. And I think it would just be a nice idea to get more information on why. But I definitely think it's positive, and I see a lot of what they're doing on their Facebook page and in their newsletters. So I would just continue to find ways and identify and ask how they need help.
Thank you. Same question, Desirae?
Well, I'll start the easy part, which is that my daughter just started kindergarten. She's at Ford ELC up on Clark Road in a Spanish immersion. And a few parents are starting a PTO there for the first time in a long time. And so I said that me and another family could bring one energy unit to that. So I'm looking forward to building up that PTO, and especially because I live literally like cat-a-corner to Wise. When I moved there, it used to be Adams, and then it transitioned. It was rebranded to Wise, and I've seen what's happened there. And I'm like, we need that everywhere. So how do we spread that across the district? Also, even before my daughter was in school, I joined efforts to keep the middle school, international middle school that was doing the YB, to keep it within the school district. So I joined parents at that time. I also am a person, I learned about when the merger between Ypsilanti, that's now Ypsilanti Community Schools, but when Willow Run and Ypsilanti had merged, and there was a big debt that came in to play, and that debt is haunting us still. And it's not allowing our school district to be able to put funds where they really want to, which is in our teachers, in our students, in all these, in our grounds. And so since I learned that, I kind of, whenever I have the ear of someone who might be able to do something, I bring it up and I say, hey, y'all, what can we do to get that debt off the books? And so how do we collaborate? So I just bring those things around with me to different places. In terms of partnerships, something that I would love to see, so Prospect Park, which is right where I live, it's going to be up. It's the next park ready to get a renovation. Well, guess what? There's a school right there, which is Wise. Other students, kids use that space. I would love to see us do some kid charrettes, some kid programming to say, what do you want to see in this park? And I think that would be a fun project to do.
Thank you. Okay, we are now at the time for closing statements. We will begin with Ms. Harris. And go ahead. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Again, I appreciate this evening's opportunity to have a chance to introduce myself to the community outside of door to door, and learn a little bit more about me and how I'd like to get involved in the community. Here's this word again. I love Ypsilanti, and I know there's a lot of ways that we need to improve, but I am committed to the city, and I feel like I'm not alone in that statement. I am hardworking, energetic, and passionate, and I pledge to be informed, communicate, and be sure to contribute to a growing and sustainable Ypsilanti. As an independent candidate, my voting will always follow logic, reason, and fiscal responsibility, and never a particular political viewpoint. That being said, I pledge to represent every person within Ward 3. And then House absentee ballots are going out. Please take your time to closely review the ballot, ask questions. I'd like to ask you to remember to split your ticket to vote for me. My name is on the ballot, so no need to write it in. I am listed under Council Member 3rd Ward on the far right column of the ballot. To learn more, reach out at ashantiharrisipsy.com or email me at ashantiharrisipsy@gmail.com. I would be excited to serve my community in this way, and I hope you do reach out and ask questions of me. Thank you.
All right. So I'm running for city council, which is a position of service. And I believe my experience speaks for itself in terms of how I approach service, my service work. I convene community meetings and educate folks about the process of government and creating change in groups like Rising for Economic Democracy and Ypsi. I work to inform the public about what's going on locally through things like What's Left Ypsi and Ypsi Can I Share. I advocate for what we need in the community at multiple levels of government and areas of housing, environmental justice, and community safety and wellness in groups like Defend Affordable Ypsi, Michigan Alliance for Justice and Climate, Liberate, Don't Incarcerate, the Subcommittee for Housing Affordability and Accessibility, Sustainability Commission, Citizens for Racial Equity in Washtenaw, and more. I bring together trusting relationships with people with different positionality in the community. So I bring that together with my education, my personal lived experiences, my focus at looking at long-term strategies, centering people, and my millennial impatience to move us forward. So I ask for you to vote for me. I'm the Democrat on the ticket. Thank you, Ward 3.
Thank you, ladies. Great job. Okay, next we will get set up for the 3 mayoral candidates of Ypsilanti. It is my honor to introduce the 3 candidates running for the mayor of Ypsilanti. First, we have Nicole Brown, Democrat. Then we have Amber Fellows, Independent. And then we have Mark Allen King, Libertarian. Did I say that right? Okay. Okay, just a reminder of our housekeeping rules. Each candidate has 60 seconds for your opening statement, 90 seconds for your closing statement, and 2 minutes to respond to each question, both from me and from the audience. Candidates are to focus on the issues. Personal attacks are not permitted. Following the questions from myself, which will last approximately 25 minutes, we will begin live questions from the audience. Candidates, you will begin speaking in alphabetical order by last name. All candidates will have an opportunity to be first or last to answer the questions. Do you all have any questions for me? Okay, great. We will start with Ms. Brown with your opening statement.
All right, thank you. Pardon me. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I definitely want to thank the League of Women Voters, the Ypsilanti District Library, and the Senior Center for hosting this event. It's always a pleasure to participate. So my name is Nicole Brown, and I am running for the position of Mayor of Ypsilanti after serving on City Council for the past 8 years as the Ward 1 representative and twice as Mayor Pro Tem, which I currently serve. I'm in it to create transformational change. I am really committed to collaborating and working with the community to really create, lasting change, not only around affordable housing, community safety and public safety, mental health, as well as infrastructure. And I just hope that throughout listening to these questions and my campaign throughout earlier this year, that I will, again, maintain your support on November 8th for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Amber Fellows, may we have your opening statement?
Hi, yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Fellows. I am the nonpartisan, unaffiliated candidate. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Ypsilanti District Library, and the Ypsi Senior Center for coordinating this event tonight and the opportunity for us to talk about our ideas. I'd like to thank Taryn for moderating, and I especially want to thank the audience tonight and everyone watching this. Without you, this wouldn't mean anything, so thank you. I am a 20-year resident of Ypsilanti and EMU alum, and I am a 18-year renter of Ypsilanti as well. I have experience as a renter in a community that is 70% majority renter. I have been involved in the city of Ypsilanti since 2016, and I have been on 3 different highly engaged city commissions, twice as a chair of those commissions. Aside from giving my pitch for why you should consider me for this role, I'm here to draw attention to political ideas of broadening decision-making power, reparations, and housing justice, to move away from a politics of despair and defeat.
We have to have you wrap up. Sorry.
Okay, yes.
Okay, that might make it perfect.
My apologies.
Sorry.
I'll just wrap up my sentence. So, to move away from a politics of despair and defeat, as well as offer an alternative vision to the status quo political administration that has been inert and neglectful to so many of the issues that impact the vast majority of Ypsilanti residents.
Thank you. Mr. King, may we have your opening statement?
Hi, my name is Mark Allen King. I am the Libertarian candidate for the mayor of Ypsilanti. I want to also thank the League of Women's Voters, the Senior Center, and the library for even having a Libertarian sit up here along with everybody else, because that doesn't happen very often. I'm going to keep my opening statement brief. I stand for liberty. I want to make sure that everybody here in the city is as free to live, to own a business, and to enjoy themselves here as much as possible. And I guess from there.
Thank you. All right. Now to the questions. As a reminder, I will read the question once, and it will not be repeated unless requested. First, we are going to start with Nicole. How does the role of mayor differ from the role of other council members? Why is it important that you be the person to serve as mayor?
Thank you for that question. So ultimately, I would say that overall, the role doesn't differ by much because we all have the same shared voice and ability to bring forth ideas, to bring discussion. You can have two council members put anything on the agenda or bring an item for discussion. And so really, it's a shared responsibility. The mayor's role is to really guide us through the meetings, be the face in the community, and be an ambassador for the city and to represent the city along with the city manager and other city staff. And so for me, the difference would be being able to partner directly with our city manager and staff on day-to-day issues and make sure that the needs of council are being ushered forth to staff as well as to the community, so folks really have a connection to leadership and the body as a whole. But overall, the role is shared, and it's to be worked as a team. And to cultivate the change, it means that you have to know how to not only be a leader, but to follow. And so, again, it's a teamwork makes the dream work. And I know that's corny, but it's true. Thank you.
Thank you. Amber, same question.
So yeah, I do agree with Nicole that as far as technically how our municipal government is structured, the mayor doesn't have much different role than the rest of city council. However, I do think that we ought to start challenging the way we think about our municipal government. I don't think necessarily one person, myself or anyone else, or 7 city council members should be the people that decide the important decisions for 20,000 people in the community. We ought to start broadening our power and our decision-making beyond City Hall, involving more people, involving stakeholders from various groups that impact their lives incredibly. And we can do this democratically, and we already have the tools. We can start to do this with citywide voting, extensive surveying, and even commission work. So that's what I think.
Thank you. Mark, same question.
All right, so my understanding of the question is just mostly to clarify what the mayor actually is. It is a member of the city council. It's pretty much kind of like on a nonprofit board, your president or your chair, where they just kind of oversee a meeting and they just make sure everything is followed and is running properly. Was there a second part to that question?
Why is it important that you be the person to serve as mayor?
Yeah, well, I've been a part of nonprofits in the past. I've never held a chair position myself, but I have been vice chair on a few. I am very well aware of how to keep a meeting going, how to keep something on topic, because that's usually one of the issues, even if you have only a board of 8 people. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we have everybody watching in the internet world right now. So if you guys could hold the mic a little bit closer so that they can hear you. They're having a hard time, okay? All right, this next question is for Amber. What neighborhood do you live in? Why? And where are your favorite places to spend time here in Ypsilanti?
Oh, what a nice question. I live in Ward 3. I live in the Miles Garland Vinewood neighborhood on the edge of the east side. So I'm in the east side in Prospect Park. And favorite places to spend time in Ypsilanti, I really love all of the natural habitats we have here. I love spending time in Water Street. I love spending time in Highland Cemetery. I love commuting with people in our parks. So many of them are just wonderful, and I would love to continue supporting the natural habitat around us. And I love spending time in our vibrant community in the downtown area, in the Cross Street area, and Depot Town. So there's so much to enjoy.
Thank you. Mark, same question.
Hi, I live over in Ward 3 as well. Now that I'm thinking about it, there's a lot of people who are sitting up here from Ward 3. I live on the corner of Prospect and Forest, or rather near it. Pretty much you'll easily find where I live if you drive down Prospect, because it's the only place down the street that you'll see libertarian signs in front of. Places I like to hang out at are like the Worst Bar down on Cross Street. Sometimes I'll hang out at like Aubrey's or Mays, Tap Room downtown, Keystone on Friday nights for karaoke. I like to hang out at Frog Island Park by the river, and things like that.
Thank you, Mark. Nicole, same question.
All right, thank you for that question. I love this question. So I am from Ward 1. I live on the south side in the Heritage Park neighborhood. And so, of course, I love spending time on the south side. I like Park Ridge Park and walking the track, going to Park Ridge Community Center when I'm able to be there and see young people and some of our seniors utilizing programming. I love Ainsworth Circle because the neighborhood and the walkability and being able, the way that the loops, I don't know, it's something aesthetically that I really enjoy walking through that neighborhood and talking to people, and it's very friendly. I'm a frequent flyer of Tap Room, 734 Brewery in Depot Town, Thompson Block these days. I mean, really, I've spent a lot of my time locally, especially throughout the pandemic, trying to make sure that we keep our businesses alive and thriving. And then just trying to walk more and actually like move my body, because I know that health is wealth. And the only way to be useful is to make sure I take care of myself so I can take care of what I need to for other folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question goes to Mark first. What are you passionate about, and how does it show up in your work?
Well, I'm passionate about freedom. I try to make it so that that wherever I'm at, that people can do what they want, when they want, and however they want. And it affects my work because I like to, because I'm kind of a free flow thinker myself and just kind of go with the flow. Just try to solve problems as they come up, get it going, and see what happens.
Thank you. Nicole, same question.
What am I passionate about? I'm passionate about people. So I'm a social worker in my career. I work in children's mental health, so I'm passionate about young people and making sure that they have all the things they need to survive and thrive and live full lives. I'm passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. Those are pillars that I stand on. I actually lead all of the DEI efforts at my agency along with some other colleagues of mine, and I try to bring that lens to discussion at City Council. So, as a social worker, I never saw how it intersected with public service in the ways that I have learned and grown into now. And so when I'm up there on the dais as a council member, I try to bring the social work lens into the work and make sure that we are centering people and that we're thinking about not even just the things that we do, but the things that we say, how we address individuals, how we, stigmatize folks, because I encourage folks to break stigma and destigmatize often and every day. And so I'm really passionate about people and making sure that we all have the ability to live and thrive and be happy where we live.
Thank you. Amber, same question.
Hi. Yes, I am passionate about some personal hobbies that I have. I'm a musician in Ypsilanti. I have been this entire time. So I'm passionate about the creative community here. I'm passionate about the outdoors and outdoor recreation. And I work in the social services field. And so I am also passionate about the topics that I engage with, which is youth and seniors and housing. But more than everything, I am passionate about shifting our current paradigm of top-down decision-making, social control, punishment, and scarcity, and to one of bottom-up decision-making, social liberation, community accountability, and abundance. And I think we can do it together because in this room, there's so much talent, there's so much community, everyone has individual things to offer, and collectively we can do so much.
Thank you. The next question is under the topic of equity. Describe a time when you worked to make a situation more equitable. Mark, that question goes to you first.
So this happens a lot, like especially in this, because I'm a software engineer. So you usually get like a lot of war between the old graybeards of that know like everything, and then you got your like juniors. So a lot of times what would happen in those kind of fields is that the juniors, they just kind of get shoved out of the room because they don't know anything, right? So I've always been the kind of person that's like, well, why is that kind of, why are we shoving this out? Like, this might be a great plan. Why can't we just listen to it? Maybe the graybeard over there has already thought about it and has an actual argument against it. But that's the kind of and I know that happens a lot in my field because, well, we get really passionate about how exactly we write code down into a text file, and it gets pretty heated sometimes. But I always like to make sure that it's pulled in, make sure that everybody can have a nice approach, or that we can see everybody's approach and figure out what the correct way to approach this whatever problem that we have going.
Thank you, Mark. Amber, you're next with the same question.
Yeah, I think about equity in nearly everything I do. And most recently this year in the summertime, I was able to be on the Community Benefits Agreement Commission for 220 North Park, and along with my colleagues on that commission, I feel like we did quite a bit of work to make sure that that development would include people that already live in Ypsilanti. And so we wouldn't be operating off of a void of context of just anyone that would be able to afford this place, would be able to live there, but we wanted to prioritize people that already live in Ypsilanti, both in the price point of the housing, which was dramatically reduced from 120% AMI, which is someone that makes $100,000 to $120,000 a year in Washtenaw County, to 40% AMI for some of the units, which is someone that makes about $35,000 a year, which is more close to the average Ypsilanti income. And we also made sure there was a 90-day prioritization window for residents of Ypsilanti, as well as making sure this would be affordable in perpetuity by deed restricting these AMI levels of affordability. So the next generation and the next generation, the next generation would be able to have access to affordable for sale residential homes.
Thank you. Nicole?
Thank you. So yeah, one of the first things I can think of is during the pandemic, working with EMU Engage to make sure that handmade masks were available to families and individuals, especially with small children who didn't have access to masks. As well as adding felony and misdemeanor convictions to our non-discrimination ordinance to remove barriers for individuals who are seeking housing or employment. Also decriminalizing drug paraphernalia to allow for better harm reduction services within our city limits. And then most recently, of course, supporting the housing development such that Amber spoke about on city council when there was a lot of pushback from members of the community who did not want to see that development happen. And reminding folks that, sometimes we may not agree, but the good of the people is more important. And so to be equitable practices would mean to look at affordable housing and to approve that project within Ward 2. Thank you.
Thank you. The next topic is voting rights, and this goes to Amber. In your opinion, are voting rights under assault? If so, what steps can be taken by the city of Ypsilanti to protect voting rights, including the rights of people of color?
I love this question. In Ypsilanti, our electorate is incredibly disenfranchised. There are multiple reasons for this. We have a partisan system here. We are one of 3 cities remaining in Michigan to have a partisan election system. And that means we are only engaging less than 20% of all residents that live in Ypsilanti in our primary partisan system. So 10 to 20% of residents in Ypsilanti decide who our representatives are, because we are a Democratic stronghold. We're a progressive community. So everything gets decided in August in the primary. And that is effectively disenfranchising to 80 to 90% of the rest of us. And that is unjust. The other ways that people are disenfranchised in Ypsilanti is based on historic inequities as far as being able to access voting. Some of us are more well-connected, politically connected, will engage with primaries, will engage with off-year elections, but a majority of Ypsilanti residents are among the groups that are more historically disenfranchised and marginalized and have less access to voting than their more affluent and privileged counterparts. And so what do we do to rectify that? We do need to get rid of our partisan election system so we can be on board with the rest of Michigan, where we can have more people involved in the general election. But we also have to address issues of disenfranchisement among incarcerated people, among people under the age of 18 years old, among residents that have different immigration statuses. These things should be challenged on the state and federal level.
Thank you. Nicole, you're next.
Thank you. Well, the first thing that we can do is to support the Promote the Vote initiative that's on the ballot this fall. And then, I think about how we better support our clerk's office to make sure that they have everything they need to perform a successful election without barriers and the support of the systems that they use. We can make sure that people aren't being harassed at the polls, right, and deterred from voting, making sure that folks who have felony convictions know that they can vote and that you can vote absentee for any reason. Some of these things that are being used as barriers or people creating confusion for individuals so they don't come out to vote or don't vote early or don't vote absentee. We can make sure that we are educating individuals and making sure that information is out and loud and consistent. Consistent messaging is going to be really important and has been this entire election cycle. And on every door, we talk about this, about you can vote absentee. You don't have to wait till the day of. You can register up until the deadline and talk about what is needed to take with you to go and vote so you're not turned away when you get to the polls. Because there's a lot of confusion about precincts and where do you vote and where do I live and where do I go. So education, it probably is of utmost importance in all of that for those who are living here and wanting to vote and don't have the ability to do so or don't feel like they can.
Thank you. Mark, you're next.
May you repeat the question?
Yes. In your opinion, are voting rights under assault? If so, what steps can be taken by the city of Ypsilanti to protect voting rights, including the rights of people of color?
Are they under assault by an absolute sense? I would say no. It's pretty easy these days to get registered to vote. We have absentee ballot for any reason. We have ballot drop-off boxes that you can go to and drop off ballots. I know that Ypsilanti has several precincts, so a voting booth is not that far away from you. I know that in my case, it's literally a half a block down the road, but because I know that from growing up in Jackson County, it was a couple-mile drive to go to vote. So if I didn't have a car, that was effectively out before you could just go and get an absentee ballot for no reason. Something that is unfortunate within the city of Ypsilanti, which Amber did mention, is that this is a partisan election, which brings forth national level politics down to the local level that are not necessary. That is, and it does discourage people from running in smaller communities like this, because you don't see a Republican up here, you don't see a Green Party person up here, you don't see a natural law person here. I find this to be an issue because they think it's a waste of time. Even my own party thought it was a waste of time, and they rather me run for a state level position. But as for voting, it's fairly easy to become registered to vote. It's fairly easy to go and actually vote, especially now that they'll mail you the ballot. So in general, I would say no.
Thank you. This next question is under the topic of marijuana ordinance. The Ypsilanti City Council has imposed a moratorium on issuance of new marijuana permits. How should the city regulate the number and location of marijuana outlets? And also, considering both the social and financial consequences, is allowing marijuana sales in Ypsilanti harmful to its residents? Oh, I'm sorry, Nicole. Thank you.
Well, we imposed a moratorium for a reason, so that we could have more time to go back to the drawing board and kind of look at how they are being distributed. We know that there are a lot of individuals who want to come into the city to do this kind of business, and although there are opinions on both sides about if it's positive or negative. What we have tried to do is utilize revenue coming in from marijuana sales and put it back into the community. And so we developed a social equity ordinance to be able to use those funds to utilize it with those who have been, disenfranchised or harmed by marijuana convictions, disproportionately the Black community, of course, in the past. And so I think that what we're doing is the right thing to slow down the process to make sure that we have it right, and so that we're making sure that the zoning is correct and that we don't oversaturate one part of the community over another with these enterprises. And then once we figure it out and we have all the right information, then we can start the process over. And so it's an application process at this point, and I think that is a good way to go, where it's ranked and they're scoring based upon the responses that you receive from the applicants. And I actually think that once we tighten up that piece, we should be okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, your turn.
Under no circumstances should there be any restrictions to any businesses opening. That is something that the market should determine. Now, in my opinion, if you're having a social equity problem because you have licenses, then get rid of the licenses. You wouldn't have a social equity problem if there wasn't a restriction for somebody to just open a business. I don't personally smoke marijuana. It personally makes me quite freaked out. But to other people, they can go right ahead. I really don't care. It's like, why should I care? And why should I stand for stopping any business from opening their doors anywhere for any reason? It just seems ridiculous to me.
Thank you. Amber?
I have heard of grievances around this issue, rumblings in the community that people are upset with the amount and the frequency of new cannabis-related businesses that are opening. So to me, that just indicates that there should be a community process around this where we can check in with what the community wants, not by just assuming our own, social communities and people around us to tell us what they want in particular, but actually go in and survey at least, but maybe even put it to a vote to see how many, and if we want to continue giving out licenses for businesses of this nature. But I also want to draw attention to the other part of the question, which was about, is this bad? Is that what you said? Is this harmful?
Is allowing marijuana sales in Ypsilanti harmful to its residents?
Maybe only in the sense that it seems like the businesses that we have may not be actually representative of the communities that are most impacted by the war on drugs, the people that have been incarcerated and punished for their drug use. The fact is that almost everyone uses drugs and only some people are punished for it. And so the inheritors of the benefit of having cannabis businesses should be those groups that are most impacted. So people that in the cottage industry sold marijuana and were caregivers to their community and were then pulled up into the court system and penalized for that. So they should be the inheritors of the benefit of these businesses.
Thank you. All right, this question was asked in the first round. What is your involvement with Ypsilanti Community Schools, and what are any future ideas for partnerships that you may have? This first question will go to Nicole.
All right, thank you. So my involvement, well, as a sitting council member, of course, partnering with the school board as much as possible. We just had our most recent joint meeting where we talked about the debt. And so, what I think my role is, regardless if I'm on council or not, is to really advocate at any time when there is someone who is present that I can talk to about helping to eliminate that debt, to get that off the books, because that is holding back our schools, our teachers, and they're doing amazing work with what they have, but they need more. The city also, we voted to allocate in last fiscal year $25,000 to the arts in the YCS to make sure that young people, we had an additional revenue for them to be able to utilize to do the great work, because the arts are really important to a young people's education. and making sure that, you know, we're lifting the voices of our teachers. One of the things that I brought up at the meeting was what was the need around mental health during the pandemic, and what shifts and additions did the school board and the school decide to make to better support not only the children but their families, to make sure that basic needs are met, because we know that there's complex and compound trauma that has happened before, prior in communities, but definitely during the pandemic. And so whatever, you know, resources or revenue that we can find to support them, like the $25,000 last year, we would try to do so. We have a lean budget, but we can use our, you know, our thought power to also help them as well, and advocate at a state and U.S. government level to support in the debt removal.
Thank you. Amber, you're next.
So my current professional career is in volunteerism, and I am currently seeking out a partnership with YCS to connect seniors that are volunteering in the community in frontline and vital services. So that is something I hope to do soon. But besides my own personal relationship to YCS, I'm connected to a lot of Ypsilanti parents, and they are extremely passionate about YCS. They're passionate about their children and the schools that they go to. And so why not tap into that passionate energy to generate the ideas and partnerships needed to support Ypsilanti community schools? When I was growing up, my school had adults that were not associated with any institutions in particular, but were just interested in allowing children and youth to experience outdoor recreation. And so I was a part of a group called Bike and Boot Club, and that was a hugely transformational opportunity for me. And so I would hope that with YCS, we open up any types of gatekeeping that might be there to allow the passionate parents of Ypsilanti to be able to help support in the ways that they know how. And I also just wanted to say we should also support the YCS teachers. The teachers are the backbone of the entire community schools, and if we are not supporting them, we are not going to grow our community.
Thank you. Mark?
I personally do not have any involvement with Ypsilanti Community Schools. I would love to, especially because the children that would be going to those schools would be the future of our community. But I think that mainly the things that we should be focusing on is what are we doing, because it's only been less than 2 years, really, since we've come back and everything's back to normal-ish after COVID-19. We need to make sure that especially the young kids because being in school is a very good development step for children. Being around other kids their age, being able to figure out how to interact with people other than the adults that, let's face it, we treat them like children. But so that would be my main focus, would be to just try to figure out how are we going to move forward. What can we do? Is there any lasting damage that's been going on because of the time that they haven't been in school? Because I can tell you, I would have done really poorly if I had to sit at home and learn in kindergarten or first grade, for example.
Thank you. All right, now we are going to take an opportunity for any audience members to ask a question. If you do have a question, please come to the microphone. Yes, if you could just state your name and your question, and it will go to Amber first.
Okay. My name is Kyle Love. I'm a citizen of Ward 1, I'm sorry. Okay, so I was furloughed during COVID, and that gave me the privilege of, let me just take this down a bit. That gave me the privilege of paid free time. So as referenced earlier when City Council was talking about adding 3 police officers last summer, and literally not a single person I knew about it, I figured I could help by spreading the word, and I lucked out, and heard about. So it was also my opportunity to hear what people felt about that specifically. I went to the South Side and I knocked on over 100 doors and talked to many more people. from the youth to the adults. And first of all, from what was said directly to my face, clearly there was work to be done by police to not only regain the trust of the people, but to make people feel like they were not only the only line of protection in the face of danger, but a good one. So for the 6 to 12 people who were in addition of this, they were elderly people. I understand why we would prioritize the stance of the elderly, because they may feel the least fit to feel protected.
What's the question?
But let me be blunt. The elderly aren't the ones shooting up the neighborhood, it's the youth. It disappointed me to know that when I brought this up at a city council meeting, it wasn't of much importance.
Ask a question, though. What's
so
the
my question is, if this isn't valid, how do we determine what is good for the people?
Okay, that will be for Amber.
Thank you for the question, Kyle. So, yeah, I am pretty passionate about this topic. I do not feel that we need to keep throwing money at the Ypsilanti Police Department for systemic issues in which it will not solve. So last year, City Council did, in a very last-minute budget meeting with no public notice, no public input at all. It was actually my opponent here that offered a resolution to add 3 more police positions to the YPD, even though we also had 3 vacancies at the time. And also, even though that put us in $1 million budget shortfall, and also despite the concerns of staff saying we could not afford this. Yeah, I do think that the way to addressing community violence, gun violence, is to understand it as a systemic issue. And we are not going to solve systemic issues with towing and ticketing and armed patrol. We're not going to solve systemic issues with ramping up the YPD, the court system. We're not going to do it by ramping up citations or paraphernalia laws. What we need to do is transform the way we understand punishment and control, and to actually address underlying root causes of community violence and violence among youth in particular here. So the way that I would want to see this issue addressed is to actually understand what it means for people that have to participate in economies of survival that are caught up in a cycle. What does it mean to actually help these communities? And what might we do instead of just saying, oh, my constituents said they want more police? We would actually do robust community process and a vote among stakeholders to decide what to do with the police and the budget.
Thank you. Next is Mark.
So I don't think there's a lot of people here that would agree that we need to get rid of all police. It is a very important service to any community, but I think that we all can agree that there are tremendous issues with policing in general, but at the same time, and I grew up in a more rural area. Sometimes you do have to make sure that your own protection is your responsibility. Like I know that that maybe gun ownership in a city is not very popular, but it is something that you might have to consider. But I think that mainly when it comes to police is because we need them to be reliable, and we need to push the state to get rid of laws like qualified immunity, so that we can actually take action against officers that do wrong. But again, we don't really talk about things like that. It's usually either or, like let's do the Blue Lives Matter crap or the let's get rid of all police crap. And let's actually come up with something useful. Come up with actual rules of how policing should be done, how we want it to be done, and what happens when it's not done right.
Thank you, Mark. Nicole?
Thank you for the question. So yeah, I did support adding 3 additional officers in that budget. that budget year, and it was not a last-minute amendment. Actually, it came up in the original budget conversation and was discussed and sent back to staff to run the numbers and see what the impact it would have on the city. But the reason that I did is because it's a complex issue. It's not an either or, it's a both and. We can't say that we need to eliminate police before we actually have the mechanisms in place to support those same people that we're saying that they are not protecting. I don't believe that police are the answer to everything. I don't. But I also know that during those meetings, the loudest voices were not those who were most impacted by violence, by crime. There were people who were not experiencing it at the highest rates. Those people are my neighbors. I live in the neighborhood where we see the highest crime and the highest young people getting involved in shootings. I live kitty corner to where a young person was murdered. So when there are people coming to my porch and coming to my doorstep, or not even coming because they're afraid to do so because they're hiding in their tub because of gunshots, I'm going to listen to those voices and I'm going to lift them in city council. And if I were the only one who was going to do that, I would have done. But luckily I had peers who were also brave enough to stand up and say, it's a both and, it's not an either or. So I'm also working to have a non-police crisis intervention team started in the community of Ypsilanti. I've also been working alongside my colleagues to decriminalize different things, to make sure that social equity is happening in our cannabis industry, to make sure that we are centering equity. So again, I don't disagree that police are not the answer to everything, but I do believe in listening to the voice of those who are most proximate to the issue, and those are the voices that came to me and my colleagues, and that is why that amendment was added. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Kyle, for the question. We do have a online question. Okay, we're going to just real quick, because I think it was good information that you all were talking about in regards to neighborhoods. So we're going to continue with one question with criminal violence, and then we'll go into some other topics. Concentrate Media reports that since 2019, felonies committed with a dangerous weapon have increased 16.5% in Washtenaw County, with Ypsilanti City and Township representing 60% of those assaults. However, at its September 13th meeting, City Council voted to ban automated license plate readers, which the county sheriff proposed as a crime-solving tool. What steps should the city be taking to reduce and solve crimes? Mark, you're first.
Well, first of all, we shouldn't be installing license plate readers around our city to track people to figure out where the heck they are. That seems like a really ridiculous thing against the people who are doing no wrong. Because one of the things that people forget is, although they promise that they're going to use this only for crime, for criminals, that's never how it works, ever. They're going to use that information to figure out anything that they deem is necessary. This is true when you go with policing on anything, even things with civil asset forfeiture. Jesus. Look, that they can just take your property without any means, because your property is up for grabs, not you. You're not on trial, it's your property. So they can even do that with your car at that point. So, like, why? But I mean, the question is more of like, what should we do and what should? But I think that's more of the citizens. We should stand to denounce any violent crime. Violent crime is an affront to all of us. Why should we stand for anything like that? It seems just ridiculous to me that this question is even asked, because we all don't like the idea that people are getting shot. But at the same time, if we just stand idle, do nothing, and then our police officers are ineffectual because for whatever reason, then we're not going to solve the problem. I mean, like, this is why that's why I advocate for taking things into your own hands. Not saying go out and be a vigilante, by no means. That's even more ridiculous. But if you're being affected, if somebody comes up to you, you should have every right to defend yourself, and that should be well protected.
Thank you. Nicole, same question.
Thank you. Well, I think, one of the main things, and I think we've all talked about this so far, and we heard the Ward 3 candidates talking about housing. So access to housing and jobs is going to decrease violence. And we know that to be true. We also know that we can do things to support those in the community already around, gun violence. So gun buybacks, helping families have access to safe ways to store their weapons if they do have them, doing youth outreach, talking to individuals about the importance of being educated around ownership and around prevention strategies within your homes, right? Talking to your children. The license plate readers, of course, are an invasion of privacy, and they would have, in my belief, unintended consequences, and particularly for, Black and brown people. And we know this to be true. It doesn't matter how great the technology is, there is going to be misuse because we cannot control nor can we oversee everything that happens once it's being utilized. One of the things that I've already done in working with, I'm currently the liaison to the Youth Police Advisory Commission. And so something that we did was we talked with the chief and the commission around, okay, how do we make sure that we start to encourage policy change? So for instance, when we see officers pulling someone over for, an infraction, that we know that with their insurance, stopping officers from being able to ticket people and tow cars because they don't have insurance, because we realize that the systems that are in place sometimes are not refreshing themselves quickly enough for updates to happen. And we've seen lots of people be arrested or be ticketed or have their cars towed for something that is actually not even a real infraction because the system hasn't refreshed in time on their dashboard. So, looking at situations that create unintended harm to people and putting mechanisms in place and changing the culture of who is out here doing this work with community, right? Building bridges, making sure that we understand true empathy and generosity when we're interfacing with our neighbors as well as our law enforcement.
Thank you. Amber, same question.
So police do not solve violence or crime in the community. They just don't. It's all the data does not show that police does anything. Even within our own community, as our police department budget has increased, there has been no correlation of crime going down. So this is just an absolute myth and fallacy. In fact, police are very dangerous to the community. Even this year, there was a YPD officer involved death. Someone was chased on the street and was killed, and it's not getting that much media coverage. In 2007, David Ware was also killed by a YPD officer. So this is also a situation in which we have to actually reframe the way we think about safety and violence, and that the police actually don't necessarily help this in the way that we are hoping to, and that it's really these other systems that are kind of extracting from certain communities, that are pulling away resources and wealth, so that there's eternal suffering among a section of our populace. And then what we do to solve it, we just add more and more and more police to it. And that is just a paradigm that we need to change. I also want to mention that, if Nicole Brown and council were serious about a unarmed response crisis team, then they would have already used I think it's like 7 open police positions right now that are unstaffed, made a budget amendment to move those resources over to start building an unarmed crisis response team. And we should be doing that. You should do it tomorrow. So, if we're going to be serious about this issue, then we have to actually use our resources and funds to do it.
Thank you. We do have an audience question. If you could just state your name and the question.
Hi, I'm Kat. I don't know if you can hear me. I apologize. So there was a question earlier for the City Council Ward 3 candidates about a person living across the street or in the same neighborhood as a transitional living home. I also live across the street from a house with guys on parole. And it's one of the integral parts of my community and my neighborhood. And whenever there's a conflict that arises in the community, we handle it like neighbors. We go up to each other and we talk it through and we figure it out. And we make a safety plan from there. So I'm wondering what your response is, because I know we talked a lot about police officers, and are you pro-police? I'm just curious about that. I guess that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, I'm pro-police because they are a necessary function of a community. Because, again, we don't just want... We all appreciate when something happens to us that there is somebody that we can call. But like as it comes to the question earlier with the council, like of that transitional house, it's like, in my opinion, especially now that there is apparently no ordinance against having extra unknown people, is that should be up to the property owner. It's private property; it should be up to them. If they're okay with those people living there, it's okay with me. If they're not breaking any laws or not breaking any city ordinance, then so be it. But because yes, as much as I agree that pulling people over for like license plate violations and insurance just enforces poverty. Let's be honest, it makes car ownership impossible for some people. But yes, that's kind of a ridiculous use of our police, especially as a primary job. I know it brings in money, and who cares at that point, because we don't care if they can get funded just for pulling people over for dumb reasons because they can't spend the $100 to $200 to register their car every year. But we do need police. They are very, very, very important. We just need to make sure that they are held accountable, that they are maintained, because they need to be able to they need to be prepared for situations so that they don't just go out and shoot people like we've seen in some places in the United States. Now, I don't like when people bring up certain cases as like, oh, this person got shot by the police. I'd like to have a little bit more context of what happened, just because it's important. But yeah, I am for police.
Thank you. Amber?
I hope it's clear. I'm not for the police. Not as it stands right now. The institution of policing does not promote community safety. So I just want to mention, it's not just the police, it's the whole system. So the courts, the police, and prisons do not disappear social problems. They disappear people. And they disappear people with the 13th Amendment in the U.S., literally we have legalized slavery in our prison system. So we disappear people through our court systems and our police, and we put them in prisons where we then extract their labor from them. It's a horrible system. We need to begin to start changing it. And if we're actually serious about community safety, then we have to start thinking about community care. We need to start building out our communities of care so we actually have relationships with each other, trust, understanding, acceptance, and we need to work with models that are proven to work. Harm reduction works, Narcan saves lives. There's so many strategies, and I'd love to talk about it more, and I'd love to work with the community to actually develop these things together. Because it's not me, it's not city council that should be creating these policies. It is a community-wide effort, and we should use all of our talents to do it.
Thank you. Nicole?
Thank you. I agree with much of what Amber just said, honestly. I'm not pro-police. I'm pro-people. I'm pro-community. I'm pro-empathy. I'm pro-equity. I'm pro-people having what they need, which means housing, which means jobs, which means education. I'm pro-listening to the voices of those who are impacted. So somebody might say, I need police. Someone else might say, I need more resources. And I am pro-making sure that happens for each individual person, because that's what equity means. And so right now, again, we can't get rid of police altogether. We know that's not a thing that's going to happen overnight, but we can move towards less policing and less policing in our communities while building resources and building programming up within these communities. And we've already been working toward that. We see that with Supreme Felons. We see that with other organizations that are out here going and mentoring folks in the working community and dismantling things before they even happen within the community these days. So we can get there where we don't call on police for everything. But again, it's a process. So no, I'm not pro-police, I'm pro-people.
Thank you. All right, we have our final audience question. Please state your name and the question.
Hello, my name is Amory. My question is, how does your experience with what has happened on Water Street inform how you imagine its future?
Okay, I was so entrenched into the question. Amber, your question.
Yeah, I'm going to answer this question. I also just want to mention, because I didn't get to talk about it very much, but reparations is also another strategy to address the systemic harms of community violence and policing. And I will talk about that more at some other time. But as far as Water Street goes, my experience with Water Street is pretty intimate. In 2016, I joined the Human Relations Commission, and on that commission, we started talking about issues of rising rent and gentrification in Ypsilanti. It was really hard-fought 6 months of negotiating what this even means. And then in 2017, there was this development called International Village. It was a proposed $300 million development for Water Street to build upscale housing for international students. And our commission decided that we wanted to forward a resolution to council to address International Village and affordable housing. And there was so much pushback from the mayor at the time and council and just outright obstruction. It was almost impossible to get this town hall. But we did get this town hall. We talked about International Village and affordable housing for hours, for days. And now it is just an accepted hot button issue. Gentrification is real. It is here. We've had a 9% reduction in Black residents in the last 10 years in Ypsilanti. This is not a joke. That is a policy failure. That is criminal. So Water Street is extremely important to me, and because of how it was handled, I do not think that we should be creating RFPs, which is requests for proposal, by one or two staff that just dreams up what they think should happen with Water Street. We need to have a community process to decide what to do with Water Street, and then we need to vote on it as a city. We did that in 2017 to bail out Water Street with public funds, so we ought to extend that same courtesy to residents to decide what to do with Water Street.
Thank you. Nicole?
Thank you for the question. You know, there's a lot of experience with Water Street. So many iterations of things have come and gone and have not, you know, panned out. And maybe that's for the best, right? That's good. We're in a good place now to be able to remediate that location so that we're eligible for, you know, something that we all want and need to come to that 31, 32 acres that remain. As we see, you know, the family dollar is there, and I don't think that that was maybe the best decision that was ever made about what to put on Water Street, and we don't want a repeat of that again. So I agree that we need community engagement in that process so that everyone in the community has a voice in what happens there. I think that we've heard from a lot of folks that we want to see dense housing, mixed use development down there so that sorry, I apologize. So that we see an increase in housing, right? That is a hot button issue right now. That is a need in our community for people to have places to live so they can live thriving lives. And then we need to enact and utilize the CBO again in that process. And, you know, my counterpart here was a part of creating the CBO, and I think that's a really wonderful document and a really wonderful ordinance. And so we need to make sure that we trigger that whenever anything is brought forth, whether it be from the community or from a developer or whomever, around what needs to go on Water Street.
Thank you. Mark?
I personally don't have any experience with the Water Street, but I can make a statement about quote-unquote affordable housing. We here in the city of Ypsilanti have the highest property taxes in the county. Do you think that that doesn't have any effect on the cost of living here? It's harder to own property in the city. Naturally, if somebody owns property for rent, it's going to be forwarded to the residents. So we should be looking at perhaps figuring out how to lower those while still maintaining the budget, because that's always the tricky part, and also allowing people to use land to build housing. Because if you increase supply, the price will drop, unless demand raises. But of course, and then we also have another issue here in the city, is that a lot of the rental units in the city of Ypsilanti are not really occupied by people who live here year-round. They're occupied by people who go to the university. So we have to address that as well, because that's not something that we can just ignore. Just building or having the government build more housing on Water Street is not going to solve the problem. It's just going to add another task for the city to maintain, which from walking around Ypsilanti, I can see a lot of places where the city already doesn't maintain it. So, like, for example, over at Prospect Park, there's literally trees there with bark falling off of them. So if we're having this problem where we can't maintain everything, why are we even trying to expand it? Let's let people build.
Thank you. All right, we are down to our final 2 questions, and then we will do closing statements. This question is under equity. Please state one concrete step you would take to make the LGBT community more inclusive, and then also one concrete step to advance racial equity. Oh, I'm sorry, Nicole.
Okay, a concrete step for LGBT and racial equity. Okay, well, for the LGBTQ plus community, I think it would be to be present, to show up, to show support. I can't call myself an ally unless they do. And so being present and being there is really important. In the role of mayor, you being in spaces really shows leadership and also shows the direction that the city is moving in. And again, I'm only an individual, but knowing that being in spaces is important. Being proximate to issues is important. Being proximate to people is important. And I really do believe in proximity. In terms of racial equity, one concrete step, again, would be to continue looking at policies that we have in place that disenfranchise Black people and people of color, and making sure that we use an equity lens in all the things that we do and develop, whether it be through a CBO process for our development or ordinance changes that we create within the city policy and departments, and then the way that we do enforcement, or the way we do code enforcement, or how we ticket individuals. I mean, we see the disproportionate impacts right now, to be honest, about folks who have the ability to afford to maintain their properties, or have access to things that others who are more affluent or who have more resources have. So making sure that we're looking at policy and cleaning it up in a way that it doesn't directly negatively impact people of color.
Thank you. Mark, same question.
In my opinion, we should all be the example of what we want. If we want that there to be equitable, or rather I prefer the term equality for LGBT and for all races, we should be the one to point out when we see somebody acting afoul. And I think that it's also important, just as Nicole said, for the leadership to also be there and actually show and be the leader and say that we are for every member of this community, regardless of what you believe, what color the skin is, who you choose to love, anything. But at the same time, I don't really see many places right now in city government, per se, that you could arguably point at directly and say, no, this particularly targets this group. You might want to look more at the state or federal level for that.
Thank you. Amber?
Yes, LGBTQIA. I just want to say thank you to everyone hanging out. Beautiful queers out there. I know you're all tired. So I am part of the queer and trans community, and I am for queer liberation. So that includes not only the right to exist and move freely without violence, intimidation, or discrimination in our community, but the ability to self-determine what each of us needs to be whole. So queer liberation is only possible when it is for all of us in every intersection, not just for the most privileged of us. So that includes poor and working class queer and trans residents of color, disabled queer and trans residents, our youth and elders in our community, and queer and trans residents of different immigration statuses. Queer and trans residents are overrepresented in our rental market by a lot. So addressing the landlord monopolies are a queer and trans issue. We need to be serious to challenge the health and mental health systems, our legal system, the public and private spheres, to address the systemic inequities that our community faces. And we can do this together in collective action efforts and in broad community decision making. And then as far as racial equity goes, it's pretty clear that we have issues in Ypsilanti. It's local to us. And so in order to realize the goal of equity inclusion of all residents in the political process in a meaningful way, marginalized residents of Ypsilanti must be made politically and economically whole. So at a minimum, the federal, state, and city government must repair for past harms and neglect of Black and Indigenous residents in the form of reparations. So how this might look is to bring stakeholders into the community, to do town halls, and then eventually identify people to be on a reparations commission. That commission can audit our city resources, can do extensive official surveying, and then eventually put together recommendations that can go to a citywide vote. But we need to do this.
Thank you. And for our final question, and this is in the topic of community. What is your definition and understanding of community, and what would you do as mayor to support it? Nicole.
My definition of community, so community is really, to me, where everyone's voice is important, where everyone's voice is heard, where people are free to be exactly who they are despite what the opinions of others may be, which we do see happening quite often, people being marginalized just for who they are and who they were born to be. I see community as a place where we can have disagreement, but still have mutual respect, where we practice grace and generosity while also tackling really hard and difficult things. And as mayor, you know, my goal would be to foster just that, to be able to come to the table and work with any and everyone who wants to be there and who wants to talk about what's going on, to make sure that all the voices are heard and that I am able to lift voices of those who don't feel comfortable or feel safe to come to the table themselves, to make sure that they're not left out of the conversation. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Amber?
Community is everything, and that is why Ypsilanti is special in particular. That is why I was drawn to this place 20 years ago, and that's why I've remained. The people here in Ypsilanti make this community incredibly special, and we can move toward a thriving populace by making life easier for everyone in Ypsilanti. We need to first focus on repairing damage to historically harmed communities, and we need to expand power and voice to critical decision-making to issue stakeholders and everyone. And community to me means the ability to love one another and freely associate without consequences outside of our control and bound up in institutions that are trying to separate us. So any effort to make connection and to care for one another is what I value in community.
Thank you. Mark?
Our community is our neighbors. It is the people across the city from us. It is the people who run the businesses of our city, the people who come in to work within the city of Ypsilanti. And it's important that we all, not just the city, look out for every one of us. We need to make sure that the person who fell on hard times can make sure that he or she can pay his bills at the end of the month. That's our responsibility. I do not believe that this should be something that should be just pushed onto the city pretty much at all, because the city is its function is to be just that, the city. What rules are we going to follow about how tall our grass can be, things like that. Not exactly to just sit there and say that we need to look out for each other. That's all of our jobs. That's what our community is. It's what we need to do.
Thank you. All right. Great questions. Now it's time for the closing statements. And we will go with Nicole. You're first.
All right. Well, thank you all so much again for hanging out with us tonight. What I would say is I think that I bring experience, I bring growth, and I bring a commitment even through adversity to continue doing the work for this community, for Ypsilanti as a whole, as I've represented Ward 1 for the past 8 years as the Ward 1 council member. I strongly believe in community. I strongly believe in our young people. I strongly believe in our seniors. I strongly believe in making sure that we support everyone in this community to make sure they're able to live, thrive, and enjoy within this wonderful city of Ypsilanti. I was raised most of my life here. I'm an EMU grad, a 2-time grad. I continue to mentor students in the community as well as at the university level. And what I've learned is that through warmth and the ability to really lead with integrity, you can accomplish really great things. So with proximity and all of you in mind, I hope to be your next mayor of Ypsilanti. And so I hope that you all will vote for me on November 8th or before to be your next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have Amber with your closing statement.
Thank you, Taryn. So I'll try to keep this short because everyone's tired. I just want to say that, Ypsilanti is a really progressive city. And we're always getting kind of middle of the road or conservative Democrats. We can do a lot better. And I'm not saying I'm the best or anything, but I'm saying I am interested in policy changes and structural changes that wouldn't prioritize one mayor or 7 city council members to make the decisions for everyone, but to actually bring in more people into the decision-making process and the political process. And I have been very effective at what I've been committed to, and I would be a powerful advocate for Ypsilanti on the county level, on the state level, and even maybe the federal level. So please consider me for this, and if you're interested in movement work and this speaks to you, please reach out for joining our campaign. This is a campaign for the people. So my website is Amber with the number 4, the people. And our socials are on TikTok, Insta, Twitter, Facebook. And if you live in Ypsilanti or you're not registered to vote here, please register to vote. So yes, my name is Amber Fellows. I'm for the people of Ypsilanti, and I hope you vote for me in November 8th.
Thank you. Mark, your final closing statements?
Ever since I started visiting the city of Ypsilanti to attend Eastern Michigan, I just was astounded by how welcoming this community is and how easy it was to become a part of this community. I don't ever feel like I've ever been shoved out, and I would love to keep that here. Make sure that we can have a business functional city that's fair to its residents, that applies its laws equally, and also allows people to live the lives that they want to live. And that's what I stand for. That's why I'm a libertarian.
Well, thank you. We have gone through about 16 questions this evening. Great job, you all. I would like to just give a few reminders. Yes, get out there and vote on November 8th. And then if you'd like to join me as the moderator with one of my SOARs, Chris Campbell, on October 13th at the LRC. We will be there at 7 o'clock. But thank you all for participating, and thank you to Shoshana and to Catherine for having me again. This has been a great experience, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
So once again, thank you everyone so much for coming here tonight. Thank you to Taryn for moderating. Thank you for Catherine and other members of the league for all of your work. Thank you for the candidates. Thank you to people in the audience. If you want more information about stuff that the library is doing, we have copies of The Loop here, which is the official newsletter and program calendar of the library. The library represents the city of Ypsilanti, Ypsilanti Township, and Superior Township. Anyone can use all locations. We're opening a new Superior Township library very soon, and there's an exciting community event happening on this Saturday, October 8th from 2 to 4. It's a book brigade where we will literally be moving the books from the old Superior Library to the new Superior Library. So if you want to be part of that library history, come on by, and if you want more information about it, you can check out The Loop or ask at any Ypsi library. And here's Catherine.
So a quick thank you to everybody. Thank you especially to the candidates for taking your time and your earnest energy to come out and work to serve your community. Thank you to Taryn for doing an excellent job moderating. I hope we can do this again. And I just wanted to point out the League of Women Voters has both a state guide that's just printed information from the candidates themselves. And then there's a local guide for Ypsi and Lincoln school districts that has even more, hyper-local races. And all the information is information that candidates answered the questions in their own words. So take a copy if you would like. Vote411.org is also. Oh yeah, these are at the library. And vote411.org also has online information. So please vote, and thanks again for coming out.